びっくり機能出さないでくれる。そっちが気になって集中できねえわよ。
Oh, so Idris one of those types who avoids those spoilery magazines. Continuing right from where we left off last week, Toko's makeshift Sentai team were facing down a bunch of living sandstorms, about as what you'd expect.
ストップ。右腕がグワングワン動いてます。
Rightfully figuring that they should just wrap things up sooner rather than later, Toko took a page off Kokoro's playbook and just started firing them lasers.
やったかなんて言ったら、そりゃやれてないのがお約束ですよ。
Makes my job easier. With the lasers not working, he figured then that the power sword would. Specifically, Toko tried to just make a bigger storm to disperse the smaller ones, which, yeah, I'm not gonna use the Patrick clip here because I'm not sure if that's good or bad science. What I will say is that it did do a good job at making rainbows. Y'all just need to develop stronger stomachs like the Car Rangers. However, and even with the epicness of the vocal backlinks of Akira Kushida, they weren't going to be able to defeat this enemy all that easily, as according to Idra, Azir's consciousness was in every grain of sand there, which, yeah, that's quite the numbers. Thus, the only way they could defeat him would be by reassembling him into one mass. Quick, somebody buy the biggest sand bucket from Walmart! But yeah, it was a pretty interesting challenge, as their enemy was essentially countless grains of sand that couldn't just come together on their own, except maybe through the power of bonds, which, yeah, at least in this context, it does make sense. In this case, they were going to kind of cleverly use the Kizuna 5's teleporter tech to get all of the magical sand into one area, and then Idra could cast a reconstruction spell on it. To do this, they of course needed a lot of bond energy, as well as perhaps someone actually close to Azir, which of course Rania volunteered for.
助けてあげることができなかった。だから今度こそ彼を助けたい。
Oh, don't worry about it too much. He was just going to ask you if you could help him move his couch. With that, they executed Idra's plan, but of course, the sand wasn't just going to cooperate. As a result, she could actually feel the enemy's resistance as she was putting up her spell. Fortunately, she had backup from all of her allies, in particular Toko, who decided to turn on his special powers.
Just already!
And Idra's quote-unquote bonds for Toko ended up activating a new power in the Ranger, which at least did feel earned rather than insert obvious punchline here. And it was something that they could use in and out of the Kizuna Kaiser, probably so that it could be sold separately, and also give us an awesome moment to just throw in the opening as an insert song. It also gave us the typical lame gold repaint, which yeah, just give me the regular colored version with more variety any day of the week. From there, they just needed someone to pull his consciousness back together, which Rania did in a pretty nice, terrifying, and kind of erotic moment. Yeah, this series sometimes confuses me in all sorts of ways. Regardless, it was still a really good battle, with some good animation, mostly during the CGI mech bits, but we'll talk more about that during the closing thoughts. Later, Azir and his goons, having returned to normal, apologized to the elves, who understood his situation, but also, understandably, weren't willing to just immediately forgive him. Thus, to regain their trust, he agreed to work with Rania and the village to make things right, which honestly was a really nice way to close out this episode and... Oh yeah, I almost forgot about evil Ryutaros. Am I being redundant? But yeah, sure enough, the guy who was literally just one syllable away from just being called an outright villain, Vidon, revealed his true form as another member of the Demon Queen's clan. He also took the opportunity to reveal his truly evil and disgusting goals.
Brother,
Yeah, I wasn't referring to that kind of disgusting. Then again, I guess Keiji Suzumura has just been typecast as the incest guy. But yeah, he also revealed that, along with Azir, he had brainwashed some of the revolutionaries, including the bald dude who gave the king one of the most over-the-top assassinations ever. Which, yeah, I guess kind of explains the reasoning for their actions a little better, but as I always say, I don't like brainwashing as a plot device, as it just removes a lot of nuance from the story by removing the characters' agencies. Also, considering that some of them still objected to the bald dude, Vidon didn't get everyone, so my point that the revolution should have fallen apart that night still stands. Regardless, it at least gave Toggle a viler villain to take down. However, it wouldn't be easy as Abu Dhabi just suddenly appeared too.
変身前に倒す。シンプルだけどこれが一番爆笑。
I mean, usually that doesn't really work because transformations only really take up milliseconds of real time, but I guess we have to point out all of Dr. K's stuff, right? To almost prove my point, Rania was able to quickly henshin and just as quickly was taken out. Yeah, are we sure that Toshiki Inoue isn't still writing for the show, considering how much the female writers just keep getting jobbed out? Granted, the rest of the team didn't fare much better, as while they didn't really like each other, the Demon Brothers managed to slowly wipe out all of the heroes and push them to the edge. And when Idra was almost taken from him, Toko realized that he had to pull out the big guns, which considering how he also asked Logi to take him out if he got out of hand, it was clearly something that was going to be on the hazardous side of things.
Are you ready? Uncontrolled switch! Black Hazard! Yave!
Yep, Toko had a Berserker form that also acted as a deadly upgrade, which is actually a bit more of a Kamen Rider kind of thing. Like Puyasai Shin, whose default form was a Berserker, Kuga's Black Ultimate form could have become one if Godai hadn't mastered it. Same applied to Agito's Burning form, but he quickly just turned that into the Shining form. Personally, my favorite example of this trope has always been O's Putatira form, both for its awesome design and powers, but also how it managed to give Eiji a rather intriguing arc by the end of his series, over realizing how self-destructive his selfless actions were becoming. By contrast, Super Sentai doesn't really have such form changes, at least not by choice. Yeah, it's also a case of them either being brainwashed or having an evil clone made of them, rather than just being a deadly upgrade that they choose to bear like the Riders. The closest I think they've ever gotten was with Tokyuger and Wright's Dark form, which didn't seem to really affect his personality, so it's not exactly like Toko's situation here. On a bit of a side note, they would end up reusing this costume for a stage show, where some monster turned into Tokyu number 0, and he was also voiced by Kenichi Suzumura.
どうせなら闇の0号って言ってほしいかね。
I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, as again, he does do a lot of work for Toei, but still, interesting little bit of trivia there. Anyway, the episode ended with Toko transforming in a way that blocked Abu Dhabi's attack, but also gave me vibes of Dark Sakura from Fate Stay Night, so yeah, this isn't going to end well for anyone. This was a really good episode, kind of for that desert battle, but mostly for that final twist. I mean, don't get me wrong, the former half of this episode had some good action and great ships, but the final twist of Keys to Black was especially gripping. It did something a little different for Super Sentai, but more importantly, something very significant for Toko himself. One thing we didn't really bring up was how the animation this week was just kind of bleh. It was especially apparent in the Kizuna Kaiser's cockpit, like what is even going on with Ronnie over here. Now that said, I'm actually not too barred by this, as 1, the CGI mech stuff kinda made up for it, and 2, I think they're saving out the best stuff for the finale next week. Moreover, when you get down to it, this is a bit more of a character-focused episode, between Idra starting to become more honest about her feelings towards Toko, who really have become a cute couple, to Sid Red Sentai's inner turmoil about having to use a deadly upgrade. Now, I get that this trope is a little more suited for Kamen Rider shows, as those tend to focus more on the inner turmoil of the title character, while Sentai is a bit more of a team thing. So of course, a Red Sentai shouldn't just totally break off from them. However, for this story, and in spite of the many allusions to regular Sentai, this is important to bring up for a character like Toko, who has to recognize how much his obsession with protecting bonds could actually become self-destructive. It's a good start to a final development before the end of the season, and Kizuna Black just looks badass, so I'm really looking forward to seeing him next week. And overall, this is a solid enough resolution to the Azir story arc, and a great setup to this anime's finale. We'll see how truly evil this Black form is, ignoring how many perfectly normal Black Sentai we've had in the franchise. Thank you for watching, and if your dark side hasn't taken over, well, maybe you can be kind enough and check out some of our other videos. It's actually rather appropriate that we're covering a story about a tokusatsu hero going dark, considering what we're covering tomorrow. Look forward to Kamen Rider Gav tomorrow, and until then though, for now my friends, and could you not use that form here? There's already enough vermin on the beach as is.